Meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everybody. Um, I hope you can all hear me well. My name is Mandana Shafan, and welcome to the National Book Critics Circle's conversation about newsletters and the future of arts writing, led by NBCC board member and my friend, Tobias Carroll. So I'm your tech host for the evening, and I'd like to just go over a few housekeeping details before I introduce our moderator. If you want to enable closed captioning and view a live transcript, click Show Captions button at the bottom of your screen. You can also click View Full Transcript to view the transcript in the side panel of the meeting. And of course, we have the wonderful Mylin Hill here to offer ASL interpretation for us. Thank you so much for being here, Mylin. We're going to have time for questions and answers for our speakers. So if you have any questions, we ask you to use the Q&A link again at the bottom of your screen at any time so that we can bring it into the conversation when we start talking about questions and the like. I'm going to monitor questions and I'll also post relevant links throughout the session about our great speakers and their publications. So now to introduce our moderator, my fellow board member and friend Tobias Carroll. Tobias is the author of 5 books and writes a monthly column on books in translation for Words Without Borders. His next book about the film Kill List will be published as part of Bloomsbury Academic's Time Codes series. And of course, he's a much loved board member here at the NBCC. Take it over, Tobias.
Thank you, Mandana. Thank you, everybody, for showing up, and thanks in advance to the panelists. I'm very happy to be hosting all of you. I'm going to do a very quick introductions, but really, my first question to each of the panelists will be to kind of say a little bit about their publication. So, I'm joined tonight by Ross Barkan of the Metropolitan Review, Daisy Alioto of Dirt, Juliet Escoria of Zona Motel, Maria Bustillos of Flaming Hydra, and Keith Phipps of The Reveal. And again, we're here to talk about newsletters and arts writing and where everything is going. So, to start out, could you just tell me a little bit about the publication that you edit, and how would you describe it to someone who hasn't seen it before? Daisy, can we start with you?
Yeah, so Dirt is a collection of newsletters. Dirt is the flagship newsletter. It's also a podcast network and a lifestyle brand. But we actually started our books focused newsletter within the last year and have had tremendous success with it. So I've started to understand what people resonate with newsletters. With books writing and reporting specifically, which has been really fun, and has been some of our most popular content across all of our newsletters. And we also just announced that we're going to start publishing our own books. So I will be thinking about using newsletters as a channel to market our own titles as well soon enough.
Thank you. Ross, I think we're just gonna go in alphabetical order for the first one because that seems probably the easiest way to do it.
Sure. So I'm editor-in-chief of the Metropolitan Review. We're a books and culture review magazine. We started almost 1 year ago. Our 1 year anniversary comes up at the end of this month. We have a Substack as well as independent website, and we're about to publish our very first print issue. We're having a big party in early February. We've also started a reading series, which is very exciting. And I see it as a a place where you can really find great new writing. So we publish book reviews, straight book reviews. We publish essays. We publish fiction. We publish nonfiction. I find the book review function itself has been neglected by a lot of publications. The only time they'll really review a book is if they're shoehorning it into a larger political argument. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I've written many of those pieces, but I also wanted a place where we can discover new books. And that's something I've been very proud of at the Met Review. We review big five books, we review self-published books, and we run the gamut. And when we do a variety of things, we published a very well-traveled interview with Gay Talese, which was also something we're going to be publishing in our first print issue. And we want to just keep growing. I mean, we've had a lot of success on Substack, and now we're getting into the phase of wanting to expand. So it's been going well so far.
Thanks very much. Maria?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Maria Bustillos. I am the lead editor at Flaming Hydra, which is a cooperatively owned newsletter. We publish every day, probably two, sometimes three stories, sometimes one. Um, and there's a collective of about 65 writers who are participants and co-owners in it. We don't have any sort of outside influences whatsoever. There's no advertising. There's no sort of investors or anybody that owns it or is interested in it other than ourselves. So the proceeds from subscriptions are shared between the participants. It's been going for not quite 2 years, and it's super fun. We also publish books. Last year, we published our first kind of what I consider a blockbuster, which is the All collection that a lot of our writers had published in the All before. And so we collected a lot of what were our favorite pieces and put them in a really quite beautiful book. We have a lot of activism that we do in terms of supporting libraries and digital ownership rights. I work in that area like pretty actively, just myself. And as far as book reviews go, we basically want everybody who works at Flaming Hydra, who contributes to it, to write whatever they want. We wind up having a lot of book reviews and a lot of film reviews, and people are able to sort of use it as a sort of safety valve. And we're also very interested in experimenting in terms of like forms of ownership, and how do we involve people and what does it mean to own it, and aside from just splitting revenues, we also want to create a space for all our contributors to be able to kind of speak to readers more directly than they would be able to do in a conventional publication. And so we're just kind of making it up as we go along, and it's been really great. I'm very proud of what we've been able to achieve so far.
It's great. Juliet?
Juliet Escoria, I am one of two editors-in-chief at Zona Motel. I helmet along with Misha Marin. We were brainstorming around my kitchen table about exactly a year ago, and then we launched in April. It's very much a sort of like collective model, or as we somewhat jokingly call it, a brotherhood. Um, in terms of it being something that belongs to all of us. I think there's a lot of similarity between what you were saying, Maria, and all sorts of proceeds are shared. It's very DIY, I think, both just in terms of mechanics, but also sort of ethos. And it was born out of a frustration of several things, just the way that the internet has become increasingly more algorithm driven, the fact that reviews are no longer published just about anywhere, the fact that the reviews that are published read more like advertisements than actual pieces of criticism, and that there was no real place to go hang out with people online. So our idea is to find interesting people, let them write about whatever they want to write about, even if it's like really nerdy or esoteric, and then therefore it will create good stuff for other people to read.
Thanks very much. And Keith, what about you?
I'm Keith Phipps. Thanks for having me. I'm the co-writer, co-owner, co-whatever of the Reveal, which I write with Scott Tobias, another writer. We write about movies, and we've worked together in one form or another since the late '90s at various publications. The AV Club, where I was editor for a while, and then a place called The Dissolve, and then we have a podcast. So Scott's someone I've worked with for a long time, and we have like a nice working relationship. So at one point 4 years ago, we decided, we should just kind of do our own thing, and we both freelance it for other publications, and but like this, the Reveal is a place where we can come to do the film writing that we want to do, that whether without having to pitch it to other editors, just stuff that we like and the readers that we built out over the years, and hopefully continue to grow, enjoy there too. And what Julia says about reviews is certainly one of the things as well. The freelance market is like, nobody wants to buy your reviews. If you want to publish reviews, you should probably do your own publication. So we kind of build things out from there.
Great. And this one I'm going to kind of volley out to the group, but I feel like the rise of newsletters as a destination for, I mean, criticism, arts writing, but also just all kinds of writing has kind of snuck up where, you know, it would not have seemed if I was starting a new publication 5 years ago, I wouldn't necessarily have thought go newsletter first. But now they're really most new publications do seem to be launching with a newsletter first philosophy. And so I guess for any or all of you that want to address this, what made you decide to go, okay, we're going to do this as a news, this, the first place this lives is going to be not as a destination on the internet, but in our readers' inboxes.
I guess I'll go because I think about this a lot. Because I'd wanted to for a number of years do something like the Metropolitan Review, and we got our 501(c)(3) status, so we're a 501(c)(3) now. So I and my co-founder, you're thinking about how to begin a publication, how to get into the bloodstream quickly. And these days, the newsletter is how you do it. And I mean, the Substack ecosystem in particular is so good for this. And we just in a short few months were able to add a lot of free subscribers. We've over 24,000 subscribers now. Vast majority aren't paying. Our goal is to monetize a lot of those people. Um, and it's just the way to be seen. It's the way for your work to travel. I don't know, to be frank, I don't know how I would do it if I didn't do it through a newsletter. And it's very intimate form. I mean, it's coming to the inbox. People really engage with it. Sometimes you publish something on a website, it can feel like it's really just sitting out there, and you don't. It's not the same level of engagement where when it comes in on the newsletter, the reader they really chew it over, and that's been really exciting to see. And then echoing everyone else, I mean, my great frustration is the lack of reviews you see in most publications. And something I found with the Metropolitan Review was that there actually is a real hunger for the review, and we publish them frequently. We've grown that way. We've gotten. I don't care much about views, honestly. What I really just care about is more people subscribing over time. But we get views too. So the newsletter really is the best delivery mechanism, and I can't really think of an alternative at this point. And certainly the Substack ecosystem, which is far from perfect, but right now it's where a lot of literary conversation is happening. So yeah, if you're in it, it just makes life a lot easier. It makes growth easier. It makes your work be seen, which is the point, to have human beings react and argue and praise and scorn. So I've found that in 2025 and now 2026 that is the way to go.
Ray, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'm like very old. And so I started in the internet, like, before there was such a thing. And the whole trajectory of websites, going through Tumblr, going through like, the infinite scroll, like all these things as they happen, they really sort of changed not only reading habits, but writing habits and also habits of publishing. Like it's very cheap to do a ghost newsletter. You can do that in a day. And so the amount of investment that's required to get something like this started is very minimal. And that is, a big concern for a shoestring publication like ours. And so I guess the main thing I want to say is we came up in recent years, like over the last 10 years, you saw all of these like publications that were raising millions of dollars, very fancy website, like the whole 9 yards of how they were going to do like programmatic advertising and all the bells and whistles that went with the big websites, like of the BuzzFeed days. And that model did not actually turn out to have legs anyway. So for us, it was kind of like, we just want to have a relationship with our readers. We just want to publish what we want. We are not looking to make anybody any money, any investors or anybody like that. We don't have to like keep anybody in fast cars or cocaine. It's just us writing our stuff and people are going to read it. And it's like, it's wonderfully simple that way. It's organic. And like Ross was saying, there's like very simple, it's very simple. It's you and the reader, and everybody's all together and we can interact. And I think that that is, beginning to point towards a kind of sustainability that the kind of like boom, boom sort of moment of the aughts really harmed, the actual quality of writing and stuff as people were looking to chase these crazy notions. And so I kind of feel like it's also kind of a back to the roots thing of getting good writing to people who want to read it.
Yeah, I've lived through several phases of the internet, and when we built the AV Club, like kind of pursuing a lot of different possibilities, like it just we figured there someone would be interested in this was sort of kind of what we went by, and usually there was like I always kind of wanted to cover the big blockbuster movies there, but also like assign a writer to do like a guide to the films of Robert Bresson or whatever, and at a certain point though, people started looking at our traffic, and it's like, why can't you just do the big things? And I don't know. From there, my next stop was Pitchfork, which I kind of went there in part because it they published the Dissolve, and I felt like that's a publication that knows how to serve a niche, right? Like I never wanted to be the biggest band in the world. I just wanted to be Wilco. I want to have like a following that could sustain us. And like, you know, in my time there, they were lovely people. I had a great relationship there, but I kind of felt the whole internet economy shift while I was there, where you couldn't do niche anymore. And newsletters can be niche. Newsletters, you can find a particular audience that wants your brand of what you're doing, and reach them, and serve them. And like, so yeah, we will, the big when the big superhero movie comes out, we'll do a review of that, and maybe that will be one of our better read articles. But we also have a subscriber base that'll, I wanted to write about when Diane Keaton died. I wanted to write about like the first film she directed, which is a fairly obscure documentary called Heaven. And like, yeah, it didn't get the readership of our Superman review, but it's a piece I wanted to write, and the readers who subscribe to us, seem to appreciate that kind of thing. So that's kind of my approach to it.
Can I just say, we were sold such a bill of goods about these big audiences. It was so fake. All this stuff, pivot to video, and there's going to be a trillion people, and it was all bots, and it hasn't really gotten any better.
I'm
And I
waiting for
just
the
also
class action lawsuit about that.
thank you so much. And everybody was taken for such a ride. Meanwhile, there were all these people that were very passionate about your work that never even got a chance to interact with it or have it be presented in a way that made any sense. P.S. I loved AV Club.
And for us, it was very much practical, which is we didn't want to spend any money until we had raised money, and we wanted everything to cost as little as possible. It was also about time, because Misha and I both have full-time jobs and write on top of running Zona Motel, and so it was making something that didn't require too much work. And I don't want to sing the praises of any tech company at this point, but I don't think we would. I think we probably could exist, but we wouldn't be able to exist as easily without Substack. So that is certainly helpful. I also feel like the internet doesn't really exist in public anymore, like the actual real internet. I feel like it exists in chat rooms. And so the fact that a newsletter comes to your inbox makes it feel sort of like the group text that we're probably all a part of, where you actually feel like you're talking to a human being as opposed to a bot or some sort of AI junk slop, which is the public facing internet at this point.
Daisy, I have a question sort of related to that, which is because as you said, Dirt has a number of different brands beneath it, one of which is dedicated entirely to books. So what were some of the considerations that went into say deciding like, okay, we're going to have now just a dedicated books vertical thing, say?
Yeah. Well, Dirt, like the flagship, got really eclectic. We started off saying it was about entertainment, but it really became about so many things. And I noticed whenever we wrote about books, there was a response. And so I started to realize, oh, this feels like it could be its own vertical. I was like in the process of pitching an anthology to publishing houses, and I was frustrated by the process. And I realized how little I actually knew about what goes on in the publishing industry and the culture around the publishing industry, despite being an avid reader, and that I felt like I wanted to know more. I was looking for a publication that could be like, um, not snarky, but actually talk about the numbers and the business in a way that's compelling, but make it feel like a party report. So it came up with the idea for this book's newsletter blank as like a built if sold concept, which was like, okay, we know what we want it to be, what the types of stories we want to do, the ethos, but we're only going to do it if we find like a launch sponsor. So that's, I mean, I think that's something about that's like a little different. Like I actively am pursuing these partnerships just because that's the sort of part of like what we want to be. And we ended up partnering with a French lingerie brand called Chantal, which, you know, it sounds like a little bit of an odd pairing, but I think it ended up being really chic. And we had so much fun with them. So because they were willing to basically fund the first, I would say like probably 6 months of this thing, we ended up doing it. So we did it because we had the money to do it. And if they hadn't done it, I would have just kept asking until I found somebody that wanted to. But I was really happy that it was them, and it was such a positive experience that they just like re-upped their spend for this year with blank. So we'll figure out what we're gonna do with them this quarter. But that's kind of how the sausage got made in that regard.
So this is something that I think both Keith and Maria have touched on a little bit, but I wanted to get to the heart of it, which is the question of writing for a dedicated audience of, in some cases, readers, or in the case of Flaming Hydra, someone who is a reader of, one or several of the contributors there. Um, because I feel like we all have experience writing, about books for a more general interest publication, whether it's in a book review section, or somewhere else. So, do you think there is a difference between writing a book review that's going to be part of a newspaper or a culture website, as opposed to writing something where it is just like, here is one review among in a place that is dedicated to them?
Absolutely. I mean, the reviews I've done for large publications have, parameters that are quite rigid. What they want in terms of how long it is, how discursive you can be, how, there's a format almost everywhere that, all the familiar big places that, follows a very set pattern. We don't do that. People are allowed to do whatever they want. So we've had like these enormous, wild, we just did Moby Dick week for the last week of the year last year. And we had a sea shanty, an animation, like a talk between two different writers who had done public readings of the novel and had like treated it very differently. One of them did a podcast. And so it was like this sort of fractal kind of kaleidoscopic view of this single work. And it was so exciting to be able to do that. I'm really into experimental sort of approaches to talking about literature in public. Like one of the most exciting things that I was given a chance to do a long time ago at Long Reads, I had asked George Saunders to let me come to his class, and I had interviewed him. We became friendly, and I'm like, I really want to. I want to come to your class. And so he said, well, okay, you can come to the class about the Russian novel. And so I went to Syracuse and sat in on this class, and it was this like mind-blowing experience. I wasn't going to waste that on a standard issue profile, so they let me do whatever I wanted. And I invented this whole sort of like do-it-yourself kit for the reader, where they could read the same stories that we read and write the papers that we were asked to write and experience the class like as if they were able to take it. And so this is one of the great things that newsletter writing or like DIY type publishing is able to do for us, is like we can open the thing up and bring readers in a way that's absolutely not possible in a conventional publication. Which, I mean, I also love reading a conventional publication, like, Let a Thousand Flowers Bloom or whatever.
To jump off of that, I have a long experience writing for a lot of different publications, from very large publications to smaller ones. And the thing with Metropolitan Review that I was very adamant about at the start, and I think we've held to, is that I would not be imposing one voice or one style upon the writers. What I find very dull is how some of these very big and famous publications, I won't slag them, but you can imagine some of them. You really you'll have pieces appear from different writers, but it's very hard to detect the writer in these pieces, and you see this happen too, where now more and more prominent writers on Substack will get asked to write for mainstream publications, and their pieces go kind of through that process, the standardization process, and you can see the voices lost. And I guess what frustrates me is that the great 20th century magazines were not that way. Joan Didion, Tom Wolfe, Gay Talese, they were inculcated at Esquire, for Didion originally National Review, and they were allowed to exist as writerly individuals on the page. And I don't, that ethos at some point started to leak away kind of as magazines declined, but also there's just this kind of like internet, I don't know, sort of internet slash, mainstream media kind of hive mind when it comes to how style is approached. That was a great frustration for me. So, like the Metropolitan Review, one of our most popular pieces was a 13,000 word profile of William Volman and his quest to publish what will be probably his last book, which is like the CIA epic that Viking could not and would not publish. He ended up going to another publisher, Arcade, or Skyhorse, that will put it out this year. And it was a wonderful piece. And it's one of those pieces that maybe 30 years ago, an Esquire might have taken up, and let this writer, this guy, his name's Alexander Sarando, a great young writer, really just run wild with it. He interviewed tons of people. He brought his own distinctive style and approach to it, and people ate it up. I mean, like I said, I'm not into. I don't count views. I mean, that's a nice thing with having a newsletter based publication. You really don't count views. All that really matters is, if you're trying to make money, more people sign up for paid subscriptions. Then, if you want to grow, you just kind of see, okay, we're adding subscribers. That's good. So that for me was a big part of it. I mean, just liberating the writer, and I found we've had a tremendous amount of success just letting talented writers who wouldn't get the opportunities at other publications or would be edited differently in other publications, to let them go. And I find my own experiences being edited a lot of mainstream publications. I'm very empathetic to the writer who wants to really range more and be more creative, and just in a way, be more original. So that's something that I find has been really good for Metropolitan Review.
And I feel like in a lot of, I feel like every industry, but mainstream publishing, media, whatever, there's been a flattening where everyone is trying to be like the other guy. You see that, even on like Instagram and Substack, where they're suddenly launching these features that the other platforms are doing. And I know nothing about business, but I have a feeling that people don't actually like that. They don't want everything to be the same. And I think that what everyone here is saying, and just kind of newsletters in general, it goes back to this idea of, have your own sort of unique thing that you're offering. And, at Zona Motel, let's have things that feel very alive and very personal. And, put them in the hands of people who read a lot and know not a lot and have an interesting sort of perspective of the world, but let them do whatever it is that they want to do. And if it finds a readership, great. And if it doesn't, then who cares? Because we don't have a budget because we don't run on one.
So I had to kind of maybe build on that. I'm curious. I mean, some of you have been doing your running these newsletters for several years. Some are under, just about to turn a year old. But Keith, I know the Reveal has gone through a platform migration of going from Substack to, I believe, Ghost.
Yep.
So I'm curious, just like what have you all seen just in the time that you've been running the newsletter, and has there been anything that sort of either affected an editorial approach or just larger trends you've seen in the industry, for lack of a better word?
Well, I mean, the platform migration is kind of a can of worms to get into. We started at Substack, and and it was, they were very good for us. We were able to get sort of a year of sort of of them paying us as kind of an on ramp to get the publication started. We had an editor for the first year, Alan Scherstl, who used to write for the Village Voice. And that was great. And everyone there we worked with was great. And again, can of worms. But the political situation was such that we didn't feel comfortable staying there. We had a number of writers that said that we would not want to would not a number of readers rather who would not pay to subscribe as long as we supported Substack, because Substack supported Nazi newsletters. And the thing is, when we switched, they all put their money where their mouth was, and became paid subscribers. We lost the ecosystem you guys are talking about, which has been, I don't know. We'll see how that is in terms of long term, in terms of growth. But we haven't lost any subscribers moving there. So, I think I do see, Substack continuing to be like sort of the big brand name. And I think there are advantages and disadvantages to that. But we're kind of doing okay on a different platform these days.
Our work in digital activism and digital ownership rights particularly has, really created a big focus for us on who can shut the thing off. So many people have had, DNA info. We saw like so many like really popular and loved publications shut off through their ownership and management. And we just didn't want to be in a position. I mean, like, really, Flaming Hydra is largely a safety valve. We kind of look at it as like, this is a place that we own and control ourselves to the utmost extent possible. And so we were not going to put ourselves in a position where somebody could shut us off. A platform owner, we should get the most independence we could. Ghost is like open source publication. We like have a relationship with people who run it. We have like good IT connections to keep our thing happening by itself. So these issues are really alive to me. And what Keith was saying about the political side, I mean, we're living in a time when there are book bannings and, attempted control of libraries. And I think it's very important for publishers to be mindful of the vulnerabilities that they face when they are trying to ensure that their writers' work is protected.
Daisy, I'm curious. If I am not mistaken, Dirt is its own platform, so you're not sort of using a third party service.
We our site is independent, but we use Beehive's API to send the newsletter. We started off on Substack as well, and I would say like Substack is definitely an ecosystem leader, but there were certain like analytics and segmenting tools on Beehive that we thought would be helpful and have been helpful. And I think like just to go back to, why newsletters as a format, it's a very direct vessel, but I think that that sort of conceals that it's also a bit of an unstable vessel in the sense that like the internet constantly goes through cycles of bundling and unbundling. I think that's like what Keith and Maria were referencing. It's like stick around long enough, you'll see everything. You'll see Medium 2.0. You'll see everyone get laid off from Medium. And so Substack represents the proliferation of these tools, the democratization of these tools, which is great. It's a radical unbundling. But then, the more you unbundle, the more you start to see, okay, I can get into somebody's inbox, but I can't make them pay attention. And even if I can make them pay attention, I can't necessarily make them pay the type of attention that I would want them to pay, which is where all of these sort of editorial considerations come through of like, who do we really want to be. And somebody, maybe it was Ross, was talking about how the platform does start to, maybe it was you, Juliet, sorry, starts to influence how the writing is. And we're already seeing like this convergence of like a Substack voice, which isn't bad. It's just like it's once it becomes legible and you can identify it, then the urge to, like, especially among this crowd, to disrupt it becomes really strong as well. And one of our popular pieces in Blank was called Laptop Nonfiction. And it was a bit about the emergence of that voice, but also tying it to like MFA voice, which, as we know, dates back much further. So I guess like what I'm trying to say is just because the newsletter is direct doesn't mean that it's stable or impervious from these other factors. And so I always try to keep that in mind as well.
There was some of you may know Anne Trubeck from Belt Publishing, who I think her a newsletter she posted earlier this week was talking a little bit about newsletter results going into sort of Google's AI summaries of answering questions, and kind of her own complicated feelings about that, which was an interesting read, and something I had not really thought about, but apparently something that I think at least Substack, because I think she uses Substack for her newsletter, has at least made some moves towards allowing people to opt out of that if they choose. But yeah, I don't know if there was really a question there, but I felt the need to say that. Um, I guess actually to move on to one other thing, and I think some of you have kind of addressed the idea of the newsletter as a place for pieces you would want to read, pieces you would want to write. I will say cards on the table. I've written for both the Metropolitan Review and Zona Motel, and I've been very happy with writing for both. In part because like I think having the idea of having being online, I could go longer and more in depth than I might, if someone says, "Hey, you have 1,200 words and that's a hard cap." Um, as opposed to like being able to go longer about on a certain book or several books. I guess for all of you, uh, is there ever anything where you would kind of say like, okay, we want to be freeform, but we want to be freewheeling, but this might still be a bridge too far, stylistically or whatever else.
Yeah. I mean, we added, I Luba had who's also who founded it with me, and we have a fiction editor, we have a post editor. I mean, we still curate. We are a magazine, so certainly we don't publish everything, and we, that there are definitely pieces that aren't a fit for us, that are just not sort of within the confines of what we do, which is okay, and they might work for someone else, and that's completely fine. I mean, the platform issue is one I do think about. It's why the Metropolitan Review also has a standalone website, and that was something I was very adamant about when we started. Was we would have Substack, but everything we post on Substack, we also publish on our own website, metropolitanreview.com, which a lot of people don't realize. .org is the Substack. So that's always just a way to preserve your work, in some sort of apocalypse scenario where Substack goes under, something terrible happens. Um, but largely it's been a very positive experience there, and we've been able to really see very quickly, big impact. And something I've really loved about the newsletter is, you own a mailing list. I mean, that is, to me, someone who's just been a writer on Substack with my own Substack now for over 5 years. I truly believe, writers controlling their own mailing list is extremely important. You can promote your own work. You can meet people. I've made a lot of friends and acquaintances that way. And something that's really great about the Metropolitan Review mailing list is now we can start promoting our live events. So we just had a reading a couple nights ago in Manhattan, and we sold over 100 tickets. And this was to see 8 people who are not famous, who have not been nominated for any awards, and nothing wrong with literary awards, have not been nominated for any of them, um, and just were there to read, and we filled out a very large room. And I do think that was the power of the publication, but also just having those emails, so being able to email thousands of people. So that's been just a really fun part of this is it translates to real life in a way I found, being on Twitter for a long time in the 2010s, it didn't in the same way. So I find that very gratifying, the fact that we're moving into doing a lot more live events, and our print launch party will be very big. And we want to have a monthly reading series, and really um, bring a lot of people together, bring a lot of different writers together, give an opportunity for writers from our publications to read to people, and just get a lot of new voices. I mean that's the big thing with Metropolitan Review. And it seems like with all the other publications here too. It's about opening things up. I don't have a party line with TMR. I don't have like a style. But when I think about what is it all about, I mean, I think certainly that there's a high culture element to it, no doubt about it. We review literary fiction and literary nonfiction, and I think we publish high quality fiction and poetry. But I think there's also a populist spirit to it as well, and that's really trying to create avenues for people who want to write, who have ambition, who have ideas, and they feel comfortable coming to us and pitching us. And it doesn't mean we always say yes, but I do try to answer personally all the emails, as many as I can. Because there's, as we all know, having submitted short stories, having written for a lot of publications, I mean, it can be a pretty degrading experience. I mean, really, sitting around for months and months and months and not getting an answer, or getting edited down to such a degree that you just don't even recognize this piece that your byline is attached to. And I think in some ways it's gotten worse over time. So, to have a place which I hope, where writers can feel welcome, that's been very important to me.
And to go back to your question as far as like going too far in terms of free form, no, like I think like the more free form, the more strange, the better. If it's boring, I'm not going to publish it. But I think like the stuff that we tend to decline feels like it belongs somewhere else. Like, this is a Lit Hub article, so we don't like it should go there, not at Zona Motel. And then Ross, what you're saying about real life, like I've had that. I live in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia, but I feel like it's had like this sort of real world effect of seeing people make friends because of Zona Motel. Even got one marriage already. So I think there's some sort of element, I don't know what it is, that allows it to take off in real life more so than Twitter did. I feel like it's maybe similar to early Facebook era before Facebook turned into the mess that it is now. So that's one thing that I liked about Substack even before Zona Motel is it felt sort of like old internet. Like I'm a firm believer that the internet peaked with LiveJournal, and it feels like a contemporary version of LiveJournal.
I would like to go back to something Ross said about owning your own mailing list. I think it is so important. I think that one of the most important things that Flaming Hydra has been able to do for our membership is get people to think about rights and what they give away, when they sign a contract, and getting people to read stuff and rights reversion and what they can do with their assets, after it's no longer in a magazine. You could, like, can I do my own anthology? Can I publish something through Flaming Hydra? We're starting to do essay collections now that we'll be publishing later in the year in a print magazine. And we too threw a party last year, and I was absolutely blown away by like how many people turned up to this thing that we barely announced, and that the pleasure, I mean, and this is partly to do with the pandemic, I think, and the isolation that people, particularly literary people, must have felt for the years of like not being able to hang out together in a bookstore or a library. And suddenly there's a bunch of literary people who are going to go somewhere and have a drink and hang out. It was like there's this ecstatic mood, of people just being able to be near each other and talk. And I feel like so much of what we're talking about here is sort of hovering around these ideas of like there's fellowship and community in the common interests of reading people, and the ability to like join up and do that and not have it just be a question of business and how many units you're selling and all this sort of stuff, like, where commercial considerations are no longer going to be the preeminent like sort of driver of activities, but just, the quality of writing and getting people to be in community is like really fun. It doesn't make as much money for people, but it is exciting and it makes for better work, I think.
Yeah, one thing at the AV Club and the Dissolve, we had a really active comments section. This is again a different era of the internet, but you know it was fun to watch communities form around that, and we tried to bring that over to the reveal by making you know having a comment section. You had to be a paid subscriber to use the comments section, but you know I feel like we get our dedicated people there and. A few months ago, we started a Discord server as another incident to become a paid membership, and it's been nice to see the community grow over there as well. I think the problem you run into is that you know it can flatline. You know, it's finding like you know you find your people, but then you have to find you know more of your people, which is not always the easiest thing to do. But I guess that's just one of the challenges of doing this.
Uh, we have a couple of questions from the audience, and I would be remiss if I didn't get to them. One very general one is, what do you know about your newsletter that you wish you'd known when you started?
The people
I
who are divas will surprise you. Most people have been very wonderful to work with, but yeah.
I wish I had been more careful about, um, I mean, I don't like the word marketing, but you know, we have a certain number of paid subscribers and then we have free ones. And I don't know anything about the marketing funnel. People tell me these like phrases. I have no idea. But like I've had to learn bit by bit over the 2 years that we've been doing this of like, okay, we have to pay a particular kind of attention to free subscribers and look after them so that they become more interested in and become paid subscribers, like what they call conversion, and all this stuff that gives me hypes. But still there's well, I don't want to reduce what we're doing to like a question of business and having to maximize profit. I do think it's really important to understand that people engage with your newsletter like at varying levels of interest, a bit at a time. And if you give them stuff to look forward to and participate in, then they start to enjoy it and they will like come closer. And so that's something I wish I had known beforehand.
This is not so much a newsletter thing, but becoming a 501(c)(3) is a lot more work than one imagines. It's a lot of lawyers and we did it, which I'm happy we did, but it was a hurdle. I would say also just since we have a paid option, an annual option, what we realized is since we're doing a fairly high quality print issue that our annual option we announced with was just not high enough. We actually had to bump it up to cover printing costs. So I think it's just being aware. If you are, running it, well, we're not a business, we're a nonprofit, but you still be very aware of money, because we pay our writers, and we had a funder helped us get off the ground, but then we also have our Substack subscriptions, we also have our live events. By I think being aware of the cost of things, and so at launch, if we had launched at the current we charge $80 for an annual now, we'd launched at 50. So we missed out on some money because people at launch would have been paying 80. We were trying to make that up, but it's little things from running a newsletter publication, especially when you haven't done it before. And you really do, it is trial by error. I mean, that's just inevitable. And there's a lot of things that you do well and you're excited about. And they're just things you realize, through experience, you get better at.
I mean, one challenge for us is we really wish everything was just free, that we could publish everything for free. But we found it's putting stuff behind a paywall is what gets the paid subscribers, paid subscriptions, and it's just sort of the trade-off. Like, do I want everyone in the world to be able to see what I write, or do I want to, eat something other than canned soup for dinner for the next month? It's the paywall is I wish we would have put more stuff behind a paywall earlier on. I wish we didn't have to put any of it behind a paywall now, but that's not the reality of the way things work.
For
How do you
me,
decide?
oh,
I'd like to ask everybody, like, how do you decide what to make free.
I'd like to get to that, but can Daisy
Oh,
go
I'm
first
sorry.
and then yeah.
Oh yeah, but I will answer that as well. We also have like a flexible paywall, and I think certain things that we have certain formats that are always free, like prompts and reading lists and uh, the podcasts. But for the longer form stuff, like you said with conversions, those were always the moments where somebody who was reading for free would become a paid reader. And then in terms of like the big learning, I figured out pretty early on that we were generating significantly more partnership revenue than subscription revenue. So I wish I would have hired somebody to go ask brands for money earlier, actually, because um, it's then I wouldn't be the one doing it, basically. So that was our learning.
And then on to Maria's question about deciding what gets paywalled and what does not.
We
We
keep our
have two
oh,
specific
go ahead, sorry.
types of posts that we paywall, and then everything else is free. And so one of them is a gossip column, which is the most controversial section of the website, also a pet of mine. And then another one is called Meet Me in the Motel Lobby, which is meant to be like informal posts where you're only talking to a smaller audience and maybe telling them, like I did one on rare, small, super small independent press books and showed those in a little video format. So they're designed to have a smaller audience and meant to be less formal.
We keep our reviews free. I think that's a good calling card feature for people discovering the newsletter. And it's linked to places like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. And we keep a few recurring features and sometimes the interviews free, but more and more we're putting stuff behind a paywall just because it's what makes sense for us financially.
We don't have a paywall yet. Something that I think about a lot, since I paywall on my own Substack, quite not a lot, but a little bit. But Metropolitan Review is all free to read, and this is something I struggle with because the way I do think Substack needs to probably get a little more sophisticated. In that I wish there's a way to kind of like a metered paywall, because right now I would feel bad paywalling someone's piece. Let's say they publish an essay or book review with us, and I put that behind the paywall, but then I don't put something else behind the paywall, so one writer kind of misses out on an audience. So we have to figure that out. I mean, my hope is we can just, through fundraising appeals, just monetize, more of our free list. I mean, that's really a goal of mine. With the incentive that we do a print issue and all annual subscribers get the print. That's the enticement. That's started to work, and we have a long way to go to get to the point I want to be at. Um, but I'm hoping to avoid a paywall, but it may be unavoidable. I know firsthand from Substack, personally, I've made much more money going behind a paywall for certain pieces. So I'm very aware that that is the number one way to make money. The other ways don't work as well, but fundraising appeals do also work, and I've been writing more of them, and I find each email does bring in new subscribers that you never come up empty. So those have value too.
I can share one thing from Flaming Hydra that was like super interesting on that point. When we have these sort of blockbuster pieces, there have been like three or four that have generated hundreds of subscriptions, like just from one piece. It's like, it's very exciting for everybody. The writers really love it. People start talking about something, everybody starts paying. And you can go ahead and take that out from behind the paywall after a couple of months and nobody minds. That's my like big insight. Everybody's like fine
Yeah,
because there's all these new things that they get. You've offered them all this really great new stuff. And so then everybody finally gets a chance to read the thing.
that's a good idea. That's because we do have pieces like that are quite long and people would pay for. So maybe for the next kind of hard hitting big one, we'll do that.
We tried the opposite, where we put the auto paywall once posts had been up for 2 weeks, and it did not work. And it just made it difficult for people to access their posts, so we turned that off.
Daisy, you had something I think you wanted to.
Raised my hand by accident. I apologize.
I was I was like, I see that. And yeah, I think really we are coming down to the wire, but there was one more question, which I think is a natural one when you have a bunch of editors and publishers, which is, uh, uh, are folks pitchable, and how, if so, what is the best way for writers to reach out to you?
I really miss being an editor, and I loved my experience cultivating new writers. But this newsletter has just gotten me. It's just the way it works. But yeah, no, I love that some of the other people are doing using newsletters to do work with a bunch of different writers. That's awesome.
So if you want it for nonfiction pieces, editors at metropolitanreview.com. Fiction is just fiction at metropolitanreview.com, and poetry is poetry at metropolitanreview.com. And yes, we are open. I think fiction, I have to check with my fiction editor. I know we were closed for a bit. I think we're opening again. And poetry we're open, and nonfiction we're always open.
If you go to dirt.fyi in the footer of the site, there is a link to guidelines, submission guidelines for what we're looking for at any given time. I think right now we have open fiction submissions. We're looking for stories about tennis and then also technology stories. And we're editors at dirt.fyi.
We are open. I put a link in one of the questions to our masthead. You can pitch myself or any of our other editors. We run exclusively nonfiction about books and culture and writing, so no poetry, no fiction. And the weirder, the better.
We're not open for new memberships of the cooperative, but we do accept ideas for how to do partnering on, podcasts or mutual joining readerships, like partnerships to sell subscription bundles. If you want somebody to write about your book, you can write to editors at flaminghydra.com, and we may find somebody who's interested, or, to interview or stuff like that. But right now we're not accepting new Hydras. We've got like 65 people. It's a lot to keep track of.
We're almost at time. I had one other question that actually, I know a couple of you have also done forays into podcasts. Ross and Juliet, you've done live events. Beret, you were talking about a release event. Where do you see there being a relationship between sort of the newsletter and whether it's a live event or a podcast, some other, for lack of a better word, audiovisual component to the project?
We're working on a TikTok. Josie Reisman is working on a sort of an interview TikTok, and she's just a very vivid personality. So I'm really looking forward to that. But it's not anything that I really, totally making up as we go along. So if anybody has ideas for us, like, I'm all ears. But that's where we're at so far.
And we do a monthly Zoom. That's another perk for the paid subscribers. And that's one of my favorite components of Zona Motel. Like, I love the Zooms. They're really fun. And it's just nice to be able to see other people's faces who are interested in the same weird stuff that you are across time zones. So we got people attending from Europe, California, and Eastern time zone all over the place.
Yeah, we haven't done podcasts yet. It's something we mused about, but have yet to put any effort into. The live events have been really good so far, and what I find is they're both just good on the merits. Like, it's just really exciting to bring people together, and they make money. It's a very easy way, a fairly low effort way, because all you need for a live event, you just find a venue. A lot of venues, they will charge you nothing as long as you hit a drink minimum. So, in New York, I'm lucky to be in New York City, so there's a lot of places you can kind of do that at. So it hasn't cost us any money, and people pay to show up. We set the tickets at $10. We sold out over 100 of them. Our launch party, we're going to charge a bit more. So I find it's the live events the best of all worlds. I believe in them. I think it's important to bring people together, and also just realistically, you can bring in money for publication.
We've partnered with a local theater to do some screenings that we really kind of need to develop that more. I launched a podcast that like kind of under the umbrella of the reveal, but I'm not sure that either the podcast or the newsletter benefit from it. So I was gonna play around with that more in the next year. I don't know. My wife's in marketing. She's always telling me all these things that we need to do, whereas I just kind of want to sit and write about movies. So, but yeah, you gotta tend to that part too for sure. So we're hoping to branch out more as the years go by.
It's really expensive to do well, and like to get people who are talented like on camera, that's not a given at all. Like we've had some really good podcasts. I used to love this one where we had a bunch of people at once, but it's so expensive to make it sound perfect and get a proper editor and music and all the stuff that bells and whistles to make it beautiful. It's not cheap. I love it, but it's expensive.
Daisy, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you also, what is the first book that you have coming out this year?
Oh my God. Well, we haven't actually we haven't actually done the publisher's marketplace announcement yet. But I can tell you it is of the Warped Tour era, and it will include prose, ephemera, photos, and hopefully be really immersive for people who lived through that, and a bit of a journey for people who did not.
I got one of the 3 worst sunburns of my life at the first Warp Tour, so
Do you have that on a t-shirt?
no, I think I somewhere maybe still have a Tilt t-shirt that I bought at it though.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So I think we are officially at the 1 hour mark. So I think this we are about to wrap up. I have one quick announcement to make, which is to say my colleague on the board, Mandana Chaffa, is interviewing poet laureate Arthur Zay next week about poetry and translation, and there is information on the NBCC's Instagram about that. It should be a fantastic event. I would also really like to thank the panelists, Daisy Alioto, Ross Barkan, Maria Bustillos, Juliet Escoria, and Keith Phipps, and to thank Malin Hill. Also, all 5 publications are well worth your time and money. Check them out. They're publishing fantastic writing, and I really appreciate everybody taking the time to come out and talk this evening. So.
Thank you for having us. Thank you,
Yeah, thank
everyone.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.